Okay, so now we're moving on to the discussion, pathways to success. This is probably going to be the longest part, so I apologize to begin with that I am long-winded. The pathways to success listed are the few that I could pick, honestly. There were many pathways to success, and there's many things that farmers do that are multiples of this in order to find success. These are just the things that I kind of wanted to talk about at the poster presentation. So first of all, if you think about local food and farming and you think about the population and things like that, it is a possibility to find success because there is such a large population. And so that makes a demand for local food. That's just kind of as an outsider thinking of the numbers and just kind of crunching this, this is how many farmers we have and this is how many people who want local food, right? So then you think about historically in the 70s, people really got out of farming on a local level. There's a lot of history I could talk about, and honestly, when my thesis is published, you are more than welcome to read that history because it is a thick part of it. But farmers overall kind of either became industrial producers or they got out of farming. And so you saw the farmers who existed on a local level had other jobs, full-time jobs, and farmed in a part-time sense after they got off work. What I have found is that this has made many farmers have skills that are amazing in farming. I mean, farming, it truly is, you have this skill with the land or the animals, where you're raising them or growing plants. And you also have this need to have a business and have business sense. And so some of the people that I talked to were excellent marketers. They were economists. There were just people who really, they brought this skill from another area into what they're doing in farming. And so I think that is culminating right now in a local advantage. And I'm seeing more and more on the North Texas scale, the local farmers are really working together. They're finding out how to find success, right? So moving on, the farm diversification. Barbieri and Mahoney wrote an article where they talk about 6 ways, or 8 ways, I can count, 8 ways that farmers find success. And these are ways that farms can diversify in order to bring in more money. So introducing non-traditional crops, utilizing a variety of marketing and merchandising. I mean, all of that's pretty much self-explanatory, but I think that overall it shows you that farms are saying, what beyond just farming can we do? Because we need to diversify in some manner in order to survive. That might also be integrated into this farmers having other careers outside of farming and then going into farming, which I saw on the local level. I can't really speak to what Barbieri and Mahoney saw. I just read the article. And then moving on from that, the destination farms or agritourism. Agritourism is a form of bringing people onto a farm that may not be even farm related whatsoever. So you might have a wedding on your farm and it's just the view, And so agritourism is really kind of changing things because you have to ask who else can offer it. So you have local food farmers who can offer it, small homesteaders, those types of farms, maybe ranches, but you're not going to be able to see industrial entities that can offer agritourism like that. Also, which was very interesting to me, is I saw many farmers who participated in agritourism. They really enjoy visiting other farmers' farms and learning about how they're doing things. In my thesis, I talk about kind of like the theory behind this and how this represents a different form of commodification. Food has been commodified; it's been branded, right? So you don't drink a coffee, you drink a brand. You don't eat a burger, you eat a brand, right? And that represents a form of commodification because you're changing the value of that food. You're changing it from a hamburger into that specific brand which you're representing by eating it. The reverse of that is what we're kind of seeing in agritourism, which is taking back a value, right? So this value of producing things on a local scale that is respecting different types of methods, or practicing different, let's talk about practicing different types of methods, and aware of different types of problems. And so that taking back of values represents a form of commodification. Commodification doesn't always have to be in a branded sense, right? Anyway, so that's just a little bit of theory, and we can talk about that way more if anybody's interested, but that's a sample. So moving on to regenerative practices. Farmers are developing all kinds of regenerative practices that they're utilizing really to find success for themselves, so that they can weather the brunts of just climate, not even climate change, but just adverse weather conditions and disasters. We're in Texas. North Texas is part of Tornado Alley, and so we have tornadoes here all the time. I talked to several farmers who had tornadoes on their farms recently. So regenerative practices are ways for farmers to kind of replenish their land so that it can withstand more of these things. And that would be this regenerative grazing, that grazing animals so that they're not overgrazing land. What they're doing is they're feeding the land through their manure being on it, and then they're moved into a different pen so that that land they were just on can regenerate. And I know it sounds like the silliest thing, but if you see the difference between feedlots and a regenerative grazed farm, it matters. And then you have native restoration. There's this picture that's floating around the internet of this guy standing beside native grasses, and their root system is just super long. I also interviewed one of the farmers that I talked to. He told me about, he was just, digging into the side of a berm, and he saw a dandelion taproot that was like 4 feet long underground, like the dandelion's on top, and then the bottom of it is just, longer than you can just imagine. And that's kind of the power of native grasses. They're going to be able to survive more. And through being able to grow these deeper roots and having this nourishment, they're able to nourish the animals better, right? So if you're grazing animals on the grass, then you have to think of like how nutritious the grass is. Permaculture is something that I just started to learn about when I did this. That's really regenerative just because you're trying to restore everything there. Even I would say aquaponics and hydroponics are regenerative practices, because in North Texas we have a big water scarcity. My ocean room. We have a need for water, and with the population boom, water, honestly, just the prices of water in-house, for your household consumption is going up like crazy. And aquaponics and hydroponic systems, once they're filled, only use about 10% of the water that other systems use. And so that's the regenerative advantage, I guess. And then moving on, the most commonly integrated practices would be abandoning tilling, eliminating spatio-temporal whatever. That's basically cover cropping. Fostering diversity, and integrating livestock with crops. Integrating livestock with crops is funny because there's laws now that are stopping farmers from being able to have chickens weed out their gardens after the year, because the chickens would drop manure on the garden, and there's laws against how close the food can be to manure, which is compost, which is feeding the plants. So those types of things are kind of conflicting with these regenerative practices, right? But they're finding ways. And then finally in the discussion, the local food system. That quote is kind of talking about how the local food system is building community. And that's really an important thing. A lot of anthropologists talk about a loss of community, and a need for community, and we don't see very much community building unless we're on like this very inclusive scale of closed groups. And so when you see a local food system that builds community through a farmer's market or encouraging farm visits from outside consumers, that really kind of opens it up. There's a lot more community building that I saw beyond that, and that is really fantastic. Not only are farmers building communities on their farms with the people who come and work there, but they're also building communities across farms. They are working together to generate, there would be the Profound Foods Hub, but there's also other ways that farmers work together beyond that. The Profound Foods Hub is really the greatest example, though. There's also the Seed Foundation has different symposiums and things like that where farmers come together. There's different conferences that farmers attend. And this type of a community is really talking about problems on a grand scale and addressing problems of not only farmer rights, but access to local foods and things like that. That's where my heart lies, really. Anyway, it's very exciting to see these types of communities being formed. There's also other types of communities where they're bringing in people who want to learn about hydroponics to people who, also, well, you can learn about food then, and it meshes well together. So yeah, those pathways to success are the ones that I talked about in my poster presentation. And thank you for listening to all this long video, and let's move on.